Sasha here, that garden girl. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I'd love you to subscribe, share with your friends, like, comment. It's so good creating a bit of a gardening community where we can all sort of, learn from each other, because gardening is a constant journey. So yeah, if you feel inclined, I'd love you to subscribe, and I will share with you my experiences and what I've learned along the way. So let's get to it. We're talking about pests today. I've been doing a fair bit on my social media accounts regarding what I do with pests, but I'm still getting asked questions, and I guess not everybody sees every post. So I'm just going to break it all down here for you of what I do come spring, because believe you me, when I first started, there were so many times that I'd planted seedlings to come out the next day and they were just completely wiped out by earwigs, by snails, by slaters, or roly-polies we call them here. And it's devastating, particularly if you've raised those seedlings from seed as well. It takes time. And it generally means then having to go and buy them from the nursery, which costs money. So we're all about getting those seedlings in once so you don't have to replant again. So you've heard me go on a lot, if you watch my social media accounts, about the use of bottles and ice cream containers. So honestly, it really is, for me, the most effective way to protect my young seedlings from things like earwigs. Now, I would generally start with this, and then I'll move to this, and then I'll move to this. Now, sorry if I feel like I'm repeating this a lot, but honestly, it's pretty important. It's the key ingredient for me. Second thing that helps with pests in the garden: find and get rid of places that your pests can hide. Now, earwigs love hiding under cardboard, weeds, mulch. So while I'm a massive advocate for mulch, I don't tend to lay it down at this time of the year, because it just gives the earwigs another place to hide. So generally speaking, at this time of the year, the ground's really moist, and I know it's going to dry out really quickly, and I do really cut it quite fine until I get to that point, say end of spring, where I'm like, now I need to put some mulch down. I need to start saving this moisture. But for me, I don't tend to put mulch down in my spring patch until I absolutely have to, and that's purely because the earwigs just get under it and they just create the city of earwigs, and that's when it becomes a real breeding ground. So if you can, hang off on the mulch a bit, get rid of all of those weeds that they're hiding under, anything that's lying around that they're gonna want to get in under and breed, get rid of them. So that's the second thing. Third thing, linseed oil traps are quite good. You can put some in a tub, half bury it in the ground, and earwigs will be drawn to this. They will get in it, they will drown it, and then they will die. There are other such traps as well, like beer traps, just plain olive oil traps, that they work as well. So that's another great way. Again, all of these ideas that I'm giving you about how to control pests, no one thing is going to be the definitive answer, and you're never going to be able to completely eradicate them. All we're really doing here is applying lots of different strategies to kind of reduce the risk of them attacking your seedlings as much as possible. And that's it, basically the only way, unless you want to use hardcore sprays, which I don't like to use because I like to garden organically. Get rid of old dead leaves on your plants. Strawberries, for example, and again, if you've been watching a lot of my social media, I go on a lot about giving your strawberries haircuts. You need to constantly be cutting back that foliage, getting rid of all the dead foliage around, because again, the pests love to hang out in those zones. It's cool, it's shady, it's sheltered. So making sure that what plants you do have in the ground, you are lifting any dead leaves, breaking them off, clearing it all away. So again, you're not giving those pests somewhere to hide. There are some things on the market that you can use also. I really love eco oil. This is great for whitefly and things like that. Caterpillars, although they're not as big a problem for me in spring and summer. Scale, aphids, all of that sort of thing, mites. So eco oil is great. Now, do not apply eco oil once and then it not work for you and go, that stuff doesn't work. Honestly, with anything like this, you have to keep reapplying it because pests have a life cycle, right? So you might go around and spray that eco oil and you'll kill one lot, and then the next life cycle has come through. So you've really got to do it constantly and over time in order to completely eradicate that whole life cycle of the pest. So don't apply it once and think that that's going to be enough. You need to stay on top of it. You need to be reapplying. You need to be following the instructions on the back. So yeah, that's really, really important if you're going to use that. Now, there are heaps of different homemade recipes, organic recipes that you can find online. If you have bought my ebook, which it talks about your spring summer patch, I've included in that some really simple homemade recipes that do help with pests and things like powdery mildew and things like that. So I've popped the link down in the bottom here, or you can find the link in any of my social media accounts as well. The ebook's $7. It actually has some really great tips in it that I haven't shared on social media. I go through all of the vegetables, or most of them, in the spring summer patch. So yeah, I totally recommend. It's $7. It's the cost of a large almond latte, and it's really got some practical tips in there. So I do share some of those recipes, but certainly you can find them online as well. Another thing that can help with pests in the garden is the use of companion planting. I go on a little bit about companion planting in my ebook. In fact, there's even some plans in there that incorporate companion planting in your garden. So that's another really good way. But also too, there are some tricky plants that you can plant in the garden that you're not necessarily going to eat that attract the bad insects, and they tend to feast out on that rather than on your tomato plants or on your cucumbers or what have you. So things like calendula, marigold, nasturtium can be really good diversions in your garden that attract those insects away from the stuff that you want to eat. So that's another great way to help control pests as well. Another way to deter pests is with the use of crushed up eggshells. Now, I keep all my eggshells, I dry them out and I crush them up. If you surround your seedlings with this, you basically create a barrier that pests can't get through. If they do, they'll their bodies will be cut up by the fine particles. But also eggshells are great too because they provide calcium to your soil and plants. Particularly at this time of the year, tomatoes can suffer from end rot, and that's usually a sign of calcium deficiency. So consider not just the use of this for deterring pests, but also to supply tomato plants and capsicums, cucumbers with extra calcium. And in much the same way that eggshells work, a product called diatomaceous earth is really quite effective too. It's a fine powder, but if you look at it under a microscope, it's full of sharp edges. And this is ultimately what makes it so effective, because the small pests sort of go over the top of it and their bodies sort of get cut up, and that's why they die. It's also really good for using with your chooks to deter any mites and things like that as well, for the same reason. Now, wood ash is also another thing that has that same effect. It's got really sharp edges, and that will sort of help to deter pests or kill pests crossing over that barrier. I've not really used wood ash in my garden because it's quite alkaline, and my soil around here is really alkaline. Like, I'm always trying to acidify it, so I tend to not use wood ash. So I would say if you're going to use wood ash for a pest, just kind of have a bit of a think about where your soil's at with regard to pH, because it is quite alkaline. I guess the main takeaway when it comes to controlling pests in your garden is to stay on top of it. You really want to be out in your garden daily. You want to be checking on things. You want to be, assisting and nurturing your garden in these young tender stages as much as possible. But also too, you want to be encouraging in beneficial insects, because they're the things that will also, like, nature's amazing. Nature will assist you with controlling pests if you let those beneficial insects come into the garden as well. So, and that's why I'm a huge advocate of organic gardening and working with nature, because I've managed to create an environment where I have heaps of ladybugs and other things in the garden that really help. So that makes controlling the pests a lot easier. Again, it's just an accumulative effect of doing lots of little things in order to give your garden the best start as it comes into spring and summer. I hope you enjoyed those tips. If you've got some of your own, I'd love to hear about them. I'd love to learn from you as well. So drop me a comment. Again, I'd love you to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time. Bye.